All right, good morning and welcome on this beautiful, sunny, snowy, cold, freezing, whatever type of weather we're having today. I think in the last week we've been through all four seasons, but that's Texas and we love it, and I wouldn't trade it for any other place. When I left Philadelphia years ago, I had a ceremonial throwing away of my snow shovel to signify never again. So even though my kids were disappointed with that eighth of an inch blizzard that we had this weekend, I was totally fine. There was enough on the cars to make snowballs, so they were all good. My name is Urshel. This is Urshel Speaks. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A lot of radio shows and TV shows, they'd say, we got a great show for you today. I expect to have a great show every day, or else there's no reason to really do this. But today we have some wonderful guests and a wonderful organization that we're going to, for many of us, meet and get to know a little bit about. And some of you may already know, but I know a lot of you out there. I'm assuming that, there are some great people out there like Chris Betts. I know Sanja's out there listening. A lot of you are very politically motivated and active. But one thing I know is we were talking about the demographics for who listen to this show, that some are more politically active than others. But what I do know about the majority of my audience is we all love this country. We all love the United States of America. There are a lot of patriots, a lot of veterans, a lot of Marines who listen to this show. So if you're listening today would be a good day for you to go ahead and share the show now. Start a watch party if you're watching on Facebook, and go and get other people to tune in, because this is a great day for comments. This is a great day for you to be able to add your voice. You might, if you really feel motivated, you can call in and talk to Mark, and maybe we'll patch you into the conversation. But I'd like to introduce you to an organization called Better Angels. Now, I think I was on a walk. I think when I told you I was driving, but I think I was actually walking my dog and looking for new podcasts to listen to. And I came across one for us Texans called Y'all-itics. And I heard a couple of gentlemen on there that were being interviewed about this organization called Better Angels. And so, Marty, tell us what you do with Better Angels and a little bit about the organization.
Thanks, Urshel. I'm a certified moderator with Better Angels, totally a volunteer role. It's volunteer run and volunteer moderated. That's what I do. Better Angels is a citizens organization, really, uniting red and blue Americans and even purple Americans and whatever color you are on the political spectrum into alliances around the country that work to depolarize America so that Americans can have civil discourse about important issues without the vitriol and the rancor that sometimes we see, especially in social media these days.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And this is one of the reasons why I was so excited when I heard some of the conversation and heard what you all were doing and how the organization got started, is because, I think even when I started this show, and one of the things that I sent into Mark saying, I'm bringing social discourse back and I'm making it sexy. And that second part was just for me. It's just kind of self-talk. But but I really believe like that's an important thing, to get people back to this place, where we can have conversations, where we can escape this mentality that I think maybe 50, 60 years ago, people started saying, don't talk about politics, religion, and sex, but now nobody can talk about those things. And those are all conversations that we really need to be able to have. And so introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role with Better Angels.
Sure. Thanks, Urshel. Yes, my name is Linda Adler, and I'm a one-time participant in a Better Angels workshop.
Okay.
But I do know about it through my friend Marty and Lisa as well. And when I first heard about it, I thought it was really intriguing, and I really wanted to know more. It took me a little bit of time before I could join a workshop, but it was fascinating, just the way that it's run and organized. So just truly a mix of red and blue participants
Okay.
talking about a particular issue, and everything is so well organized and framed and well moderated so that you can truly have a very civil discourse,
Excellent.
so that you're free and it's a safe space basically
Right.
to be able to express your opinions, but in a respectful way so that everyone is heard. And that's basically what people want, to be heard and
Right.
to make their point and get other people to understand the validity of their viewpoints, let's say. So it was very good.
Awesome. You know, I heard a long time ago that a reasonable person doesn't have to be right. They just need to feel heard
Mm-hmm.
and understood. Everyone doesn't have to get their way. Everyone's not fighting to always get their way. Although that's what it seems like. Again, when we listen to the media, we listen to the different things that are being fed to us for the sake of polarization, in my opinion, then it seems like everybody has to have their way. There's no compromise. And I often, think about, I was born here in Dallas. And when I was little, my grandfather lived over in Oak Cliff, and and back then they had wrestling, and it was at the Sportatorium in Dallas. And I remember watching the wrestlers and talking about how, man, that guy, he hates that guy, when I was a little kid. And my grandfather would be like, yeah, I was at so and so bar, a couple of weeks ago, and I saw those two guys that hate each other, drinking beers and eating together, and they look like friends. And sometimes I think that what we're fed, is like that wrestling at the Sportatorium, where it's kind of a political show that's focused on just getting reelected and feeding a base and appeasing donors and lobbyists and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know, I saw someone that from here, Van Jones. I saw him on the news yesterday, and Van Jones is a Marine like me. And I also saw Lieutenant Colonel West, who was on another show here at KVGI Radio yesterday. And Lieutenant Colonel West is a person that I just think is a great human individual, with a great military career. And, these are individuals before they're politicians, just like our neighbors. And I saw a great quote on one of the websites. It may have been the North Texas Better Angels website, and it said, if you would turn off the television and go talk to your neighbor, you might find out that we're not as different as we're being told that we are,
Right.
from conversation to conversation. And so tell me about the name Better Angels, and where did that come from?
Yes, it is part of President Abraham Lincoln's first inaugural address in 1861. It was just prior to the Civil War. And when he was inaugurated, he ended his speech calling all Americans into the nature of our better angels.
Wow.
Thus the name of the organization. In fact, that last paragraph started out saying, we are friends, not enemies, and we must not be enemies.
Yeah.
And so often in the discourse that many of us hear around our country today, it does seem like when you talk about conservatives and liberals, reds and blues, we call them reds and blues.
Right.
That each side has a tendency to vilify the other
Mm-hmm.
and see the other side as their enemy, when really that's not the case at all. But that's where the origin of Better Angels came from.
I think that's great. And I think I'm sure there's some thought and wisdom that goes into using the term red and blue
Yes.
versus Democrats and Republicans, or left and right. And so is that a very purposeful decision to use the colors instead?
It absolutely is. In fact, we talk about Republicans and Democrats, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really not about political parties
Mm-hmm.
as much as it's about the political leanings of the American people.
Gotcha.
And some people clearly lean red, some clearly lean blue, sometimes all the way to the end of the political spectrum. Many are in the middle and might say, well, I'm kind of a purple. I'm blue on this, I'm red on that. And that's fine if people want to declare that way. But sometimes we'll even ask, okay, so purple. When it comes down to it, do you lean mostly red or blue? And most
Right.
people do lean red or blue. So we refer to it that way about the political leanings of the American people. and make sure they can have a dialogue with each other.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So tell us a little bit about your role and your background and what brought you initially to Better Angels.
Sure. Thanks, Urshel. I'll be happy to. I'm Lisa Rosendale, and I'm pretty active on Facebook.
Okay.
And coming across my feed one day, about a year and a half ago, I saw a newspaper article about Better Angels. And I had just spent about 2 or 3 years trying to engage in really thoughtful conversation with my friends on Facebook. I'm red leaning.
Okay.
As Marty said, people call themselves purple sometimes. I'm pretty purpley red.
Purpley red. I like
my
that.
conservative friends think I'm a rhino. My Democratic friends think I'm very conservative, so I don't really fit. That's
Awesome.
fine.
Awesome. I love it.
But around 2014, I'd been on Facebook, sharing pictures of my dogs and my kids, like a lot of people. But I began to notice in the press and in the comment sections primarily that what had been sort of like normal traditional views were all of a sudden being labeled as hate.
Right.
If you had any concerns about a transgender female sharing a locker room space,
Mhm.
it wasn't a legitimate concern to raise. It was
Right.
labeled transphobic. And if you had concerns at the time, we had more concerns about ISIS and the threat from the radical Islamists who wanted to see the West
Right.
heard. And if you raised questions about that, people assumed that you were anti-Muslim.
Mhm.
It's I was really concerned about the exaggeration of people's concerns and trying to caricature them as more negative than they are, so that it felt like it was an attempt to shut down conversation.
Right.
So I was trying to have conversations with my friends, and unfortunately, I noticed that some of my friends just fell away. They couldn't do it. Some of them were old friends, and I was feeling really sad and kind of upset that my little experiment of trying to talk
Right.
to people who I already knew and who I thought already loved and respected me was kind of failing. I was feeling a little hopeless. So when I read about Better Angels, I said, sign me up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I filled up the form right away. So I started out as a participant, and now I'm organizing meetups in the Richardson-Plano area.
Awesome. I love it. When I saw that there was a Richardson Plano group, I was like, well, I definitely got to get connected there.
Yay.
And again, I'm on the board of Plano Youth Leadership as well. So I think that this is a great conversation to start as early as possible. I talked with, and just so you know, I'm here on this panel, and normally, because I do the show myself, I'm the best looking person in the room. And Mark used to be in the other room doing the producing, so it was kind of a easy race to win. But I'm surrounded by beautiful people this morning. But just so that people know, this, just in case you get the impression, if you're watching on Facebook, this is not a ladies' auxiliary or organization, right? You have lots of men that participate as well.
By no means is the ladies' auxiliary.
In
All
fact,
right.
that's one of the best practices, I think, of Better Angels that people find when they come in, that we think about balance between red and blue, conservative and liberal. So
Right.
all of our workshops and gatherings are a balanced group. You'll feel not alone, whichever side you lean.
Right.
And that's true on the board of directors and the staff at Better Angels. There's always a mix of red and blue. When you become a member of Better Angels, $12 a year, so very affordable.
$12 a year.
When you become a member, you'll get communications from time to time, not too many, but you'll see that maybe one time was written by a red, another time written by a blue, and you're getting a lot of balanced information that way as well.
Awesome. And so, you mentioned, the feeling of hate. And, there's a gentleman, I hope he's listening, Joe Muller, that's out there. And we interviewed last week, and I actually both video and did audio interview just to make sure that there's some redundancy. I did communications technology when I was in the Marine Corps, so there's always something that can go bad, and both went bad. Both the audio on the video and the audio on the audio went bad. But we had a great conversation, and throughout our talk today, I'm going to bring out some of the things that he brought up or that came out of our dialogue as well, and I'd like to get your thoughts and your opinions on that. But one of the questions that I asked him, he said, because I'm a white male and I'm Republican, I am automatically a xenophobe, a homophobe, I'm racist, I hate this person and I hate that person, and that's the way that I'm painted because of what I look like and because of what my political leaning is. And I asked him this question. I said, has anybody and Joe is 70 years old, so he's been around, a little bit. And I asked him, I said, has anybody actually said that to you? Specifically to you, has anyone said, you're a homophobe? You hate Jews. You don't like people of a different color. And he thought about it and he said, no. He said that, he's never actually been confronted with that dialogue. Now, he's heard it on the news. He's seen it characterized in many different places in many different ways. And we all know that that's true. But I think that that's interesting. And I look at it this way. And tell me your thoughts on this. I characterize it in some ways the way I characterize road rage. Now, I got in trouble one time because I said road rage wasn't a real thing. And people said that it is. And I said, well, I go to places like Walmart and Target and the mall. And, from time to time, someone will, step in front of you or cut you off or just be standing in the way or walking 5 abroad and you can't get around them. And it's irritating and it's annoying and it delays you from getting where you want to go as fast as you would like to get there. But rarely do I see someone start yelling and screaming at the person in the grocery store or throwing their hand up and giving them the "you're number one" signal or anything like that. Rarely do I see that type of reaction when someone is in proximity to another person, face to face, voice to voice, eyeball to eyeball. But somehow in the sanctity of your vehicle that weighs several thousand pounds and you feel like you can drive away and you're never going to actually encounter that human. I think people feel safe yelling and screaming and blowing their horn and giving ugly looks and, and waving, with not all of their fingers being used and that sort of thing, right? And I think that that's part of the reality of what we have and the beauty of what you're doing is because you're causing those conversations, you're taking those conversations out of the car at 70 miles an hour to, grocery cart to grocery cart, my kid's in the basket and you're right there. And you're actually a human being. And, and that requires a little bit more conversation. Do you feel like, do you ever have situations where, people who would probably, if they were being, at a distance, probably hate each other and never sit down. Do you see people becoming friends and developing relationships, even though they're either red or blue on the other side?
Well, I sure have seen it. And speaking of words I've actually heard. One lady in one of our workshops said, she looked around the room at everybody and very seriously said, do you realize this is the only place I can come and talk about my political viewpoints that are important to me and not be ostracized by my family, not have my yard sign vandalized in my yard, and not be told I'm wrong and called names. And she's talking about her family, her friends, her neighborhood, her local group. And then another person said it, and we were hearing that from both Reds and Blues, that it's a safe space for that.
Right. And let me jump on that word right there, safe space, because even that terminology, as a military person, as a Marine, that terminology alone is something that's kind of classified as this is for the weak and excuse me, people who don't want to be offended. Terms like snowflake come in. And actually I talked about this on the show last week. But a Navy SEAL who is currently going to an Ivy League school and is 54 years old, and he was taking an English class. Excuse me. And he talked about what he experienced in his first semester. He's a freshman at 54 years old, and he's a Navy SEAL. And so he definitely leans red and is from a totally different generation than everyone that he's in class with. But as you go through this article, and we're going to have him on the show eventually. As you go through this article, he talks about that word safe space. And he says how it's been totally mischaracterized. He said it's not a place where, you can't say anything that might hurt anyone's feelings. But more importantly, it's a place where you can discuss the difficult and the challenging things in a way that you're not just going to be attacked and ostracized. This is actually the place where most people don't have the courage to be, is in a safe place where now you actually have to listen to what the other person has to say.
So much of that resonates with me. I want to make a plug for our website
Yes.
or our Facebook page, because if you follow North Texas Better Angels Facebook page, we posted that article. That's the kind of conversation we want to facilitate. Get people out of their bubbles and their mischaracterizations of the other side, and help see each other in a more nuanced way. And definitely coming together in person does that.
Right.
You mentioned driving in your car, and I just happened to hear a presentation yesterday by Jonathan Haidt, and he was talking about how social media really removes that pressure we feel when we're face to face with someone, that we're trying to make a connection with the person that we're talking to. Whereas online, a lot of times we're not focused primarily on making that connection, the person we're engaged with, but we have this audience of people behind us.
Right.
And really what we're trying to do is make all those observers give us likes,
Nice.
indicate that they approve us. So we found that online what works the best for getting a lot of likes and shares are the little pithy cut downs.
Mhm.
And so the whole media discourages civil dialogue. It
Right.
discourages nuance. And so this is kind of where we are. We've come to, it's amplified the ugliest, pithiest thoughts.
Right.
And so the danger is, if we're too involved in that world, we come to believe those things are true.
Right.
That's how the other side sees us. And I think what I've personally loved about Better Angels is that type of environment online is draining for me. It
Right.
takes down my
Three, two, one. KVGIRadio.com.
Y'all have really just opened my bubble and just...
KVGI Radio brings you conversation and entertainment. Be sure to follow us on social media. Who streams the best talk shows? We do.
You're listening to KVGIRadio.com. Streaming live from the KVGI studios in Frisco, Texas. Live without limits.
All right, and we are back here with my friends from Better Angels. If you haven't checked out the website yet, go ahead and check it out. You can also find them on Facebook. There's Better Angel chapters all over the country. There's North Texas, there's Plano, there's the Allen chapter. And so go out and find Better Angels and get subscribed to the things that they're doing. If you're listening to this show, you listen to this show because you love and you're passionate about meaningful dialogue. And when I, again, came across an organization that their only purpose is not only to have meaningful dialogue, but to get people who have different ideologies, different political leanings into a conversation and having them have those conversations respectfully. This is something that I instantly wanted to connect with, be a part of. I think I came home from my walk. I immediately sent an email. I might have, written it on my hand or something and made sure that I wanted to connect because I just love exactly what's happening. Can any of you share with me some of the stories of what you've seen, either personally experienced or what you've seen within the groups that has been really impactful in seeing the dialogue that's taking place?
I'll give you one, Urshel, that was maybe even more impactful with me than the one when I said that people talking about how it's the only place they can come and talk about these things without being ostracized and vilified. There was one workshop where we had balanced numbers of reds and blues. There was a red in the room. We do introductions at first, and one of the reds introduced himself, and he said, "I'm not a red or a blue. I'm a red, and looked around the room, and we were slightly amused, but we heard his message,
Yeah.
There was another person in the room who leans blue, who cannot at all understand why someone would support Donald Trump. Just it's a total mystery to her. And the red, who introduced himself the way I said, is a total Trump supporter. And so we had some very spirited dialogue during that session. What I liked most was after the session was over and people were milling around and talking to each other, I noticed out of the corner of my eye those two people standing in a corner of the room talking and smiling.
Wow.
So we had a white male, red,
Mm-hmm.
and an African-American woman, a little younger than he, having a civil conversation to the side. They had found a way to communicate.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, let's get more of that.
Yeah.
If I could add, one of the things that stood out to me is Better Angels tries early in a person's involvement with Better Angels to have you come to what they call a red-blue workshop.
Okay.
And so this is a more intensive, often day-long effort than our usual 2-3 hour workshops. But the idea behind it is to really get into what makes the other side tick, to feel free to share the myths and misconceptions that you feel the other side has about you, and then do your best to address them. Part of what they talk about in that type of get together is what are your values, and to try to help people connect the policies that we might fight for in the ballot box and the signs we put in our yard with the values that we're trying to achieve. And one of the things that stood out to me was a common value for the blues and the reds was we all want America to really be a land of opportunity.
Right.
We want our educational system to work for all children. We want all children, no matter their zip code, their situation at home, to have a real opportunity to get a solid middle-class job or just achieve whatever their dream is. To have that opportunity. No guarantee, but we all cared about the opportunity. And so it was really interesting to see that translated into different policies. The Reds tended to care more about school choice.
Right.
Because, we keep spending more money and school's not working, but not getting better. Scores are getting worse, but, let's try something different. Whereas Blues just thought, we need to invest more in public education, not less, to really make it work for everybody. So we had different outcomes, but we started from the same place. And so I think just being able to have that conversation about values right there, it gives you that commonality that maybe you didn't see before.
Right.
And then it opens the door to, well, how can we work together to achieve this? Maybe it's not A or B. Maybe there's a C.
Yeah. One of the things, again, that come out of the conversation with Joe, I listened to the interview that he had previously, and in our conversation, I asked him, what has been the biggest impact on you? Because if I understand correctly, there is no part of the mission or purpose of Better Angels to change someone's political leaning. Is that correct?
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, so it's not about getting someone to think differently, but more so what I like to say, just getting people to think, especially about what and why they believe what they believe. I've been through that phase of my life a couple of times where I just went into kind of a deep analysis of why do I believe what I believe. And in talking to Joe, he says that these conversations forced him to ask himself that question. And why do I think this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I believe this? Why do I want it this way? And I think that in and of itself is a win.
I mean, not to be too esoteric about this, but I was a philosophy minor. So my favorite philosopher,
I think very deeply.
No, but my favorite was John Stuart Mill. I forget a lot of it, but John Stuart Mill stood out to me because he talks about the defense of free speech. And that's so important. If you don't have free speech, we lose out on so many things, including really the ability to understand and be able to articulate what we believe and why, unless we're challenged.
Right.
It's a muscle. If we don't use our mind, it goes weak.
Yeah.
And we also deprive ourselves of the opportunity to learn something that might cause us to shift a little bit and hold a better position.
Right.
But we need that conversation, and we need that freedom of hearing lots of different ideas in order to, help us as a country move forward to better and better ideas, but also us as individuals. So absolutely 100%.
Awesome. Now, you identify as a blue, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And so in the conversations that you've had and that you've been a part of, what would you say are maybe some of the more impactful things that you've learned from people who have a different political leaning as it pertains to why they feel the way that they do or their motivations? What has impacted you in those conversations?
Yeah, what impacted me was hearing the depth of belief that people have behind their viewpoints and their, maybe policy positions, that it does come from a deep place, that people have values behind their feelings and viewpoints, and it's good to understand that. So beyond the surface, definitely learning why people feel the way that they do. So that was impactful to hear in the session that I attended. And it also forces you, as we were saying earlier, that you have to use your mental muscle to dig a little deeper, even in your own viewpoints. So the moderators are very good about asking you throughout the course of the session, think about what the other side is saying.
Right.
And try to listen to what you agree with, or if there's something in there that you don't agree with, or, where are the areas of commonality. So we're forming like a Venn diagram in a way where
Right.
everyone's views do overlap in certain areas. And so you do have to kind of dig deeper, because it's so comfortable to sit back and just stick with your own positions and your own viewpoints. But it really does take some mental muscle to then think into what the other person is saying and why and where they're coming from. It's not normal, I guess. And I think people do tend to stay in their bubble of, the media that they like to engage with, social media that they like to be active on. And it's very difficult to step outside of that and really listen to another viewpoint and think where your views come in to color those viewpoints that you're hearing from the other side. So it was a wonderful exercise, and it does take that a little bit of mental muscle. So it was a little bit of a challenge when you're in the room and talking to these folks and trying to not just get your viewpoint across. That's easy.
Right.
It's so much harder to step back and really listen to what the others are saying and then think about how you're processing that.
Wow. Yeah, and that's where I think there's just tremendous power, and we talked about it a little bit on the break, is the bravery, the courage that it takes to, because it's really easy for me to, go to a place. Well, it's not easy for me to go to a place where everybody believes what I believe, and thinks the way that I think, because I honestly feel like I'm challenging myself and purposely trying to grow and evolve. And, last year I told people, I've overcome the fear of being wrong. I'm totally okay with being wrong, because that gives me the opportunity to grow. And but to be able to go into a room where, not only are people going to think differently than you, not only are people going to have different motivations and be very passionate about what they think and feel, but you have to listen to them. And then you may have to give, a little bit more than the initial soundbite, the Fox News or the CNN, one or two liners that you have to really, that you feel like are those impact statements, and to get a little bit deeper into that conversation. And is that where is that vulnerability really the power of the conversations that you're having?
Well, it sure is. And just when you think about that, yes, there half the people in the room think probably very strongly differently than you do.
Right.
But remember, the other half of the room is a lot like you.
Right.
Because they're your same color. And then we find that among the blues, maybe all the blues don't always agree with each other. Maybe all the reds don't always agree with each other. And we even have skills that we teach for how to depolarize within your own tribe, so to speak.
Right.
So when blues talk to blues and reds talk to reds, how to have good civil discourse there. So often I think we judge ourselves by our intent and we judge others by their behavior.
Exactly.
And it's so good to have, as Linda said, that reflection, looking in the mirror and helping others be heard while you're feeling heard as well.
And I think, too, if you spend much time online, we know intellectually that it's people who are at the extremes who dominate,
Right.
especially Twitter, but in any comment section. And now we know we have this compounding influence of, some actors from other countries who they just want us at each other's throat.
Right.
We're weak if we're at an internal war, right? So we know this is going on, but I still think if you're there a lot, I feel this myself. There's a tendency to believe those extremes you're reading represent the norm of the other side. Wow, this is how crazy they are. Oh, this is the horrible way they view me.
Right.
And so, I would walk around thinking I'm afraid to talk about my conservative views because they're going to think I'm a, homophobe, misogynist, all these words. And so it takes a certain courage. I'm just speaking from a red
Right.
in some communities to speak out. Our media is largely left-leaning, so you can feel a little bit alone if you're just reading mainstream news sources and things like that. So I think what's been really great about Better Angels is it's just that reminder that when you really get into the issues, at least in the two we went to this year we had campaign finance and immigration. And I would say in both of those, there was just a huge amount of overlap.
Right.
I mean, it kind of made all of us a little bit frustrated with our politicians that we pay very nice salaries to go to D.C. and supposedly represent us because they don't seem to. We have a lot of common ground. We were like, just let us write the bills and y'all pass them.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
I think
so-
we followed with a conversation about who wants to run for office now.
There you go.
Raise the hands.
Well, that's my, I can't remember how long ago. Well, no, I posted it last year. Something that I saw, another organization called Represent.us, and their goal is to force politicians to represent the people. And I have this mentality in this book that'll be written one day called "When Kings Went to War," and so it's this mentality based on what you're saying is that back during times of feudal systems, if I was a king and you were a queen, and we had neighboring kingdoms and we went to war, then the first horse out of the gate, doesn't matter whether we were fighting over land or water, whatever it was, first horse out of the gate was my horse, and then behind me were my sons. So regardless of what this battle is about, I've got the most to lose. My name can be wiped off the planet because of one disagreement. So I better make sure that I'm committed to this argument. And so what I mean by that and wanting to have that dialogue is not that I think that Barack Obama or President Trump or George W. Bush should be driving a tank the next time we go into combat. But more so, we have politicians.
That is a good visual.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure that there's plenty of memes out there that already have that happening.
So.
But when we have our politicians legislating over health care that will never touch their lives, they will never experience the health care that they're legislating. Retirement, their retirement is totally different than what any of our retirements will be, no matter what we've done for a living. And so they are not going to battle with us. They are not legislating and living in the same thing that they're creating for us. So it's a lot easier for a lobbyist who is, forking over money or whatever the case may be to influence them than it is for us, because they're not going to live in the pain that they create if they create pain for us with what they legislate. And so I think that, that's something, and that's what represent us, but I commented when I first saw it, I said, this has me feeling all Mr. Smith Goes to Washington all over the place. And I think they should all have to, watch that 100 times a year so they kind of get that perspective of why you're really here.
Urshel, in getting to know you, one of the things I know that one of your hallmarks is your sense of humor. And we try to bring that as well to Better Angels conversations.
It helps.
Yes, the conversations are serious.
Yeah.
We're hard on the problem and soft on the people.
Right.
And that's how we
Awesome.
make this
I love
happen,
that.
You asked earlier for particular stories from actual incidents at workshops. Many of the exercises we go through that we moderate in our workshops are very structured, and they have a purpose. We ask blues tough questions. Why do you think this? We ask reds tough questions, and so everybody can dialogue. And the way we wrap up these exercises is we go around the room and ask people what they learned about the other side. When you were really listening to the other side, because you are learning to listen and learning to be heard by the other side, what did you learn about them that you didn't know? And people were going there around the room, and blues and reds, reds were saying, I didn't know blues thought this. I thought all blues thought that. And blues were saying, I can't believe the reds think that. That's awesome. That's just how I think about it. So there are all these awarenesses, and it was very good and informative, and it's going so great. And the last guy that took his turn to tell what he learned, he leaned back in his chair and he said, you know what I learned about all of us? And we said, no, what? He said, we all just make stuff up. And everybody laughed. It really broke the ice even more. And, that became another point of discussion right there on the spot. So, we laugh, we think, we talk, we listen. We sometimes don't listen as well as we should, and that's where people can learn to listen better. And so anyway, that's just one example.
That sounds like a great exercise in humanity.
Exactly.
All right. We're going to take one more quick break, and then we're going to come back, talk a little bit more about Better Angels. And so, again, if you're out there listening, you need to start a watch party. The last segment's going to be the best. We'll see you after the break.
3, 2, 1. KVGIRadio.com.
Y'all have really just opened my bubble and just.
KVGI Radio brings you conversation and entertainment. Be sure to follow us on social media. Who streams the best talk shows? We do.
some of my people that I know that are listening.
Trying to stir
Oh,
'em up.
good.
Yeah, and
3, 2, 1. KVGI Radio.
There's one thing you want us to do before we close, to talk about some of the upcoming dates.
3, 2, 1. KVGIRadio.com.
Y'all really just opened my bubble and
3,
Five, four, three, two, one, zero, ignition, liftoff.
all right, here we are. This is Urshel Speaks on this wonderful Tuesday with these three amazing guests who are part of an amazing organization called Better Angels. You can go to www.better-angels.org and you can check out what they're doing, the conversations they're having, the conversations that I feel like everybody needs to be having. So before we get more into the discussion, I'd like to know, you all have some events that are coming up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I want to make sure that everyone knows about that, and we'll post this also in the conversation afterwards. But tell us about some of the things that you have coming up here now. I know there's a documentary that's coming out.
Right. I'll go first and tell you about the next one up. Lisa has a lot of other dates as well that she can tell you about. The next upcoming event, we would love to have everyone there. It's at the Allen Public Library on January 26th. That's
Day before my birthday.
Oh, good. Maybe we'll sing to you.
All
Urshel.
right.
It's at 3 p.m. on Sunday, January 26th at the Allen Public Library. The public is welcome. And to get involved with that, you need to register. The tickets are free, but go ahead and register for free tickets and read more about the event. And here's where you go to do that. It's bit.ly, if you know what a bit.ly link is. It's bit.ly/Better Angels Allen. That's bit.ly/Better Angels Allen. Get your free tickets there. Bring your friends and family to the Allen Public Library on January 26th at 3 p.m. And you will see there a screening of a documentary of a Better Angels workshop that took place. They brought together, right after the 2016 election, they brought together 20 ardent Clinton supporters, and the other half of the room were ardent Trump supporters, Trump voters. And it was in South Lebanon, Ohio, which we know is a swing state.
Right.
And they had that workshop. You will see a Better Angels, a documentary screening about that. It was produced by a professional director, Jim Brown, and also by Peter Yarrow. Some of you remember Peter, Paul, and Mary. That's the Peter from that. So it's professional. I think you will find it intriguing and interesting. You will laugh. You will relate to the people in the room, and you will find it amazing. And we will hope you come to the next one, which is February 23rd in Allen. It's actually a Better Angels workshop, and there'll be an opportunity to sign up for that there too. So come see the documentary with us. Come watch the movie January 26th.
Awesome.
What if I could add, for folks who are listening outside of the North Texas area, if you go to the Better Angels website that's been shared earlier, one of the tabs will allow you to find and connect with the organizer in your area. So wherever you're listening, and if you're in the U.S., go to betterangels.org and find your local coordinator, and you can reach out that way. For those who are on Facebook, and you're in the North Texas area, I want to encourage you to like and follow Better Angels North Texas. Just do a search, it'll pop up. And we try to share events that are happening all around the DFW area. So Marty mentioned Allen, which she's coordinating. I'm coordinating Richardson Plano. Somebody else is coordinating McKinney. We have a Capel group. An Arlington group is coming online, and we have leaders for Dallas, but they're not active yet. So there's just a lot of momentum, and all the events for any of those groups are posted there on that Facebook page. Anybody is welcome. You don't have to live in the area. You don't have to pay a due. Just come and check it out. You're welcome anywhere, anytime. So just please go ahead and do that. Specifically, if you are here in the local area, there are a couple other opportunities. There's a skills workshop in Capel coming up on February 15th, and that's some skills to how to engage the other side. Another opportunity for folks in Richardson Plano area is we are having a discussion on Leap Day.
Nice.
Make it extra special. This will be an interesting one. We're going to be learning skills for also communicating with the other side, but it's more about how to move from contempt, which is really the danger point, where we feel contempt for their side, to curiosity. So how do
Excellent.
we take the judgmental why and make it a curious why? Why do you feel that way? You know? And so she's going to be teaching us about that, and then we're not just going to learn it, we're going to practice it. And we're not going to practice it with a safe subject like campaign finance. We're going to pick a really tough subject,
Nice.
whatever people are terrified to touch. We might talk about abortion. We might talk about the impeachment. I don't know, but we'll decide and talk about that tough subject, trying to use those skills.
Yeah, and so you talk about the skills and some of the depolarization exercises. So for our listeners, give us an idea of what some of those exercises either have depolarizing a conversation or depolarizing yourself.
Yes.
How do you guys go about getting people to do those things?
I'll tell you two of them
Okay.
that are sometimes the most popular at Better Angels. One is we put reds together and we put blues together in the room, and they talk about two things. They talk about what are the stereotypes that you think the other side thinks about you.
Nice.
And they have that discussion. And then they come together. Well, first we also ask, okay, that's what they think about you. And then we ask them the most challenging question of all that everyone struggles with is there a thread of truth in that? What's the kernel of it?
Mm-hmm.
What may some of your own color, red or blue, done that may have created that impression on the other side?
Right.
And sometimes that's tough for people to acknowledge. And then they come back together and present their findings to each other. And reds will say, well, we think blues think of us as this. And blues are going, well, I didn't think that, but I thought this maybe. And we do the other side as well. So that's a way to get out what's really right in the first of that social media storm of those impressions we think we have of each other and that we think the other side has of us. The other exercise we call a fishbowl, because we'll put a circle of chairs in the middle of, say, all blues, and the reds sit on a circle outside that circle. The reds' job is to listen and learn what blues think, and then we get blues talking. Blues talking to each other about what they think about their liberal and progressive viewpoints and why they feel that way. And reds are just listening, right? And then when it's over, we ask the reds, what did you learn about blues that you didn't know? And they go, oh, my God, I'm amazed.
Right.
I heard them talking about this. I never knew that. And then we switch. And we put the reds in the middle in the circle who talk to each other, and the blues around the outside. And the blues listen and learn about reds by hearing reds talk to reds. And those are great eye-openers. They're very interactive exercises and kind of typical of some of the things we do.
Let me share some tips we learned in our Depolarizing Within workshop last
Awesome.
November. Okay, start with ourselves, right? So some of the ideas to counteract your own inner polarizer, just to challenge your own stereotypes. Remind yourself that the other side is more varied than the stereotype. And part of the way you can do that is by cultivating relationships with people who think differently than you. And
Right.
so if you don't know any, come to Better Angels and find some.
That's right. Whole new friends.
There you go.
Exactly. And, just recognize that your life experiences have informed your views, and different people have different life experiences. So you can kind of
Exactly.
have a little humility there with how great your views are compared to their views. Another way is just to make sure that we're listening to thought leaders on both sides of an issue. So I've started to do this when I find myself getting outraged before I post. I'll go and try to find a really good, usually an editorial, but from the other side.
Yeah.
Because it fills in missing pieces. And if you put the two together, the truth is probably somewhere in there. Or even if it's not, I'm less angry because I'm understanding more why somebody might feel this is a good or a bad idea. So it definitely like tones down my own inner frustration, and then I'm less likely to go on a rant. And then also just to distinguish between policies and core values, like I touched on earlier. But they also talked about how to talk about the other side in a non-polarizing way, and we know we can just like get with people and spiral and start raving. And so that some of the suggestions there were just like to avoid those pejoratives, wingnuts, libtards, snowflakes, Bible thumpers, whatever it might be. If you're talking about they all, the left, the right,
Yeah.
you're probably stereotyping. So like just try to be more aware of that. Understand that how you feel about a politician may not reflect the people who voted for him or her, right? We're different from the politicians.
Or even that politician as an individual.
Exactly.
Yeah, very true.
Exactly. And to criticize the idea, not motives, and then to when we're working with people, to just acknowledge their position, find that commonality, because they're more likely to listen to you if you're on their side. So you got to start from there. You're on their side. But if you can introduce some nuance, like, I've been going to Better Angels, or I've been reading about this, and I've learned something surprising. You can kind of shift that conversation to, even though they might still be far on a contempt and stereotypical spectrum,
Right.
you're helping nudge that a little closer to understanding and curiosity. If you could share something that you've learned that's meant something to you, it's more likely to resonate with them because you share their view.
Right.
So just to be able to do that, and part of the way we can do that is just to always pretend somebody from the other side is listening and ask ourselves, are they going to feel like they're respected if they overhear the way I'm describing this issue?
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. I think that so much about the conversations and the way that you're having the conversations, the brilliance that goes into it, that is requiring one thing that the way our system is now doesn't require, and that's thinking, individual thinking. So when I'm trying to ignite or inflame, some of my friends, because I have friends on both sides, people like me who, really feel like, and the reason why I say that I'm in the middle is because I don't judge any particular politician or issue. I don't start out with, now we all have our own biases, right? And because we're all raised in some way, experience certain things, right? And so, but I really try to look at the issue. What does this mean to me? What does this mean to my family? What does this mean to people that I know? Because what I'm trying to challenge people, when I ask my friends, I say, if someone is hard right or hard left, and I'll ask them, I say, tell me something that the other side has right. Tell me something that they're better, and if they were able to do all they wanted to do, our country would be better. And with the exception, I have had 100% basically the same answer, different adjectives, but most people say not a damn thing, right?
I was thinking.
Right, exactly. Joe was the only person who didn't say that, as a matter of fact, because he's been to Better Angels. And but when I ask that question, most people say nothing, and then my follow-up is, how likely is that? How realistic is that? That you and people who think like you are right about everything, and people who don't think like you are wrong about everything. How likely is that to be true? And so what I think is that it's intellectual laziness. It gives you the ability to not have to think through things for yourself because someone is telling you what to think. And you just accept that and you say, yay, this is our team. Now, I reserve the right to be that way about the Dallas Cowboys. I am totally unreasonable. Dez caught it. The Cowboys should win. They should get every call. I don't pretend to be reasonable about the Dallas football Cowboys. But these issues are too important. If the Cowboys win the Super Bowl, if they don't, my life really doesn't change. Nobody's, maybe Jerry Jones' life changed, right? Some of those players' lives changed.
Yeah.
My life doesn't change. But these issues, these things that we're talking about, they're too important for us to shut our brains off.
Right.
Yes.
And not just so that we're not thinking, but also that we're not thinking about the other humans involved in the conversation.
Exactly. It humanizes the other side so that you realize, these are real people with real concerns. They're not just a stereotype. And
Right.
the Better Angels workshops really do help you get beyond that and open your eyes. So I was saying the other day, I think attending a workshop should be required for everyone because it does help you break
to
out
graduate
of
high
your
school,
bubble.
to get a driver's license, yeah.
And think
There
of
should
all
be.
the untapped potential with Americans from all walks of life who had so much to offer, good ideas, viewpoints, all of these things that they have to offer. But if we can't engage with each other, if we can't talk so others listen, and if we can't listen to learn about others, that has created in America a barrier between America being a healthy, the country we love, because this is a barrier to all of us. And
Right.
Better Angels is trying to take down those barriers and enable all Americans to have a voice in America. It really is.
I love it. And this is what's so important and why we need to continue to have the dialogues and do the things that you're doing. Go to better-angels.org. Check out what they're doing. Get involved in the things that are happening. If you're not in DFW, if you're somewhere else, they've got chapters all over and events happening all over. Connect online. Better Angels is doing great work. I love having this conversation with you today. We'll have more. I'll definitely be at some of the events. Thank you so much for taking time today out of your morning and getting dressed up and coming out to Frisco to have this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. I'm Urshel. This is Urshel Speaks. You know what? Do something better with your life today. Go and talk to someone. Have a conversation with someone who thinks differently than you, and you'll be better for it. This is Urshel on Urshel Speaks. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Urshel.
Thank
Urshel.
you.